So we're going to go over the overhaul process and disassembly steps for this particular piece. Now ordinarily your input shaft is already going to be pressed in here with a snap ring. I've already pressed it out to make this a lot easier, because without a hole in your table it can be really hard to deal with. So the first thing you do is you take out this snap ring on the top. And this one's a little bit of a bugger right out of the gate. There we go. Alright. Snap ring. This one happens to be a wavy. You can see that. Depending on what year you're looking at, it may or may not be a wavy. So next comes this pressure plate, which looks just like the regular steels, but it's thicker. Then you got a clutch. Now these clutches are thrashed. If your clutches look like this, you shouldn't be using them. I actually pulled these out of the trash to load this up, just to show you what the disassembly looks like. Then there's a steel, another clutch, another steel, another clutch, another steel, another clutch. Now, how many clutches you have is going to depend on which specific transmission you have. If you had the one behind a 4-cylinder, then you may have less clutches. Alright, after that comes this beveled pressure plate. Goes in the very bottom, and underneath it is one more snap ring. I don't know if you can see that. That's holding down this Belleville spring. There we go. Well, cheap Harbor Freight pick does wonders for this particular task. Just pry that out, just get it around each one of these lugs, and eventually it'll come free. Now this one's a little tricky because it wants to get caught in the upper lip where that first snap ring came from. Now on mine, this was also wavy. Yours might not be a wavy. Okay, then what they call a Belleville spring. So it's like this dish thing, and the dish goes down. Which leaves us with this, which might look like that's all we got, except for this right here is a piston that actually needs to come out. Now, you may have to, I've seen where people have like blown air into one of the passages in here, inside here. There's a little hole, blow air, pull this up. To get mine out, I turned it over and I just did like this on the floor of the garage. Eventually it came free. Anyway, that comes out. And this piston has an O-ring, or like a sealing ring on the outside and a sealing ring on the inside. Now when you go to put the sealing ring back on, you'll notice that it has like a taper. And that taper goes out to the bottom. So when it goes in like this, the taper should come out like this. Because what's going to happen is fluid is going to push in from underneath and it's to catch that taper and push this piston up, and that's what makes the clutches all smashed together to give you whatever gear you need. And then you're left with the empty drum. Alright, so let's talk about this piston. So your rebuild kit should come with new pistons, or new piston seals, a small one and a little one. There's a couple of different ones in here. To figure which one we need. To get them out though, no big deal. I'm sure there's lots of different ways to do it. You're going to destroy this seal, so don't do this unless you've got the replacement. Now, I said I cleaned this whole thing up. I hadn't cleaned the whole thing up. Ugh, gross. So it's all nasty in there. There we go. So we're going to have to clean that out because that's a hot mess. I mean, just on my... Ugh. And then on the inside, the same thing. Just get your pick in there and pull it out. Alright. So these seals are trash. That's just the punctured holes in them. And now this, we're probably going to have to do a little work to clean that out. That's grosser than I realized. And then while you're doing this, you're going to want to take your new clutches and soak them in ATF. I think 30 minutes is what's recommended because you want those things to be nice and full of fluid before you go and load them into this drum. So I'm going to take go off camera, clean this sucker, and I'll be back in a minute. Okay, I've soaked this in some solvent and I hit it with some Scotch-Brite and it's looking a lot better. So you get your seal out of your parts bag and you work it around. I remember making sure that the flare, so if you can see this, see it's got a flare sort of sloped this way. So this, the high end goes towards the bottom. So the piston is going to go in the drum like this, which means that the flare is going to flare out like this, if that makes sense. So let us attempt to put this in. And there's this one shouldn't be that hard. The inner one is a little bit more tricky. Okay, so that went in super easy. And work it around, make sure it's actually in there good. So now you can see that this flare is on the outside. Okay, so then for the inner, remember there's a seal on the inside of this as well. So parts kit. Let's figure out which one is the right one. So we got the old one here. Nope. Let's be this one. Yep. Okay. Reset. Alright, so the piston, we got the inner seal out of our parts bag. Alright, this has been an adventure. So, what we've got is our piston, which has been lubed to high heaven on the outside and the inside. Now there's some question about which way the seals go. So the seal on the outer lip is flanged outward like this. So this goes down into the piston, the seal flares out to the bottom. Now the inner seal has a shape that looks like this. It's got a little shoulder on it, if I can get this in focus or not. But the shoulder goes down. So it's this orientation with the shoulder facing downward. And you got to get it in there really good. Make sure it's all smooth and not really sticking out at all. And then lube it up. Factory service manual says a generous amount of Mopar door ease, which I don't have. So we'll just go with regular old red grease, which just is going to dissolve in the ATF anyway. So, alright. And when you're going to put it in, you're going to want to put it in with like a twisting motion. So, center it over the hub, and then sort of, boom. There we go. Now we're in. The next thing that happens is you put in the Belleville spring. And the Belleville spring goes dish down like this, if I can tell. Down. Dish down. And then you put in your wavy snap ring. So I got a snap ring that's kind of wavy. It's not super wavy. Just put that buddy in there. There's a lip at the bottom. It's a hard time getting this one started. There we go. Okay, snap ring in place. And the next thing that goes is the bevel pressure plate. So it looks like this on the bottom. And it just drops in. And then you go with the friction. Now, these frictions are not my final frictions. I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes. Ordinarily, you'd have these soaking for 30 minutes. Your new one's soaking for 30 minutes. Also, make sure you've got the right ones. These are for the rear drum, the rear clutches, and they're thinner than the front clutches. So before I do the next set, I'm going to mic them up, but these are definitely thinner. So you put a clutch in, and you put a steel in. Put a clutch in, put a steel in. steel, clutch, and then the last one is the other pressure plate, which is just this thick steel. Doesn't have any sort of bevel to it. And drop it in. And then the last thing is your snap ring. So one more snap ring. Mine is wavy. I've seen, depending on what year you've got, you may have wavies, you may have not have wavies. Oh, there we go. So, now we're basically assembled, except for we need to check the clearances. The clearances are 32 thousandths to 55 thousandths. Okay. 8 thousandths and 26 thousandths. 8 and 26 is 34. All right, so let's see if 34 clears. 34 clears, and we got a little bit more room to go. There's no way 55 goes, so I'm calling this good.